to call the Board of Selectmen meeting back to order. We were in executive session earlier, and we made no decisions on the two items under our executive session. And I am going to point out that as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. Hearing nobody, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments and announcements. Just before we have the public, I'm just noting that our last select board meeting of 2023 will be Monday, December 18th.
Next.
Our next last meeting. Whatever. Go ahead.
What do we decide?
Well, it wouldn't be a regular meeting.
Good evening, Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. I just wanted to remind everyone that we have the 6th Annual Festival of Trees happening right now at the Harwich Chamber. This is a fundraiser we do for the Family Pantry. It's a silent auction of some absolutely stunning trees donated by member businesses, and all proceeds go to the Family Pantry directly.
Thank you, Cindy.
Good evening, Lynn Cooper, DPW Director. Would like to inform the board that we have installed the 46 Give 4 Feet to Pass signs that the board signed a grant, executed a grant with Mass DOT back sometime last summer. I was concerned about having to install them over the summer and gave a little pushback. They just showed up last week, and a crew of 2 men got all of them installed in 2 days. Absolutely. Also, I'd like to thank Officer Mark Holmes for his assistance in placing them all. We didn't do this in a vacuum. And thank the Bike Committee for putting us on our radar screen and helping us whittle down the, get a list together of probable installation sites.
Great. Thank you, Link. I've seen them all over the town, so.
Hi, everybody. Ray Gottwald. I've lived in Harwich since 1996, and I'm here having taught human resources on the graduate level at Suffolk University, and also having worked in human resources at the Division of Medical Assistance. I want to thank you, Julie, also for getting back to me so quickly regarding getting this back on the agenda. I know people think of human resources, they think of the typical functions of hiring and evaluations. I work several places, and you may, if we're doing some of this stuff, please correct me, Joe. I had to actually fill out an evaluation form when I left the job, you know, each category. It was an exit interview, and I thought that was really helpful. So you could see how you can work on certain things for the betterment of the employees. And I also think the major role of a human resource director is in team building and community building, not just those typical functions you think. I think that's really important. For example, orientation for new staff and ongoing training. I think we could have benefited probably the town in having a consistent orientation for all volunteers. So everybody heard the same information at the same time, got the volunteer handbook. I think that could go a long way to solving some issues, hopefully. And an idea that Mark Kelleher brought up was doing a newsletter. I think he said Chatham would do one. I think a newsletter for both employees and the town, I think, would be beneficial. And all these things are just saying, thinking of human resources beyond the standard function, but hiring a person who will be responsible for also team building, communication, and making people feel better about what's going on in the town. Another thing I think she probably would have been grateful for the last several months was a neutral party to navigate issues. I don't know that any of you up there would want to or need to get involved regarding issues of volunteers or staff. I think it would be beneficial to have some neutral party that people could go to. I think that's it. So I think it's a nice message if we could send to the citizens of this town during the holiday that the select board will vote to put a human resource director on the town meeting warrant. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate you speaking out.
Okay.
Anybody else for, yep. Hi, Elaine.
Good evening. Elaine Dickinson. I support everything Ray just said. And I hope you people will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Harwich. I've put on in front of your places at the table 2 drafts of the Housing Committee charge based on your charges for the Golf Committee. In addition, I'm once again asking you to appoint the person you supposedly approved so we can get going. There's an awful lot we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And just to add to that, I am working on drafting a charge, and we've been working on that, so tied up with a few other things, but I am working on the charge. And we will be putting that on an agenda probably in the next beginning of the new year.
Hey, good evening. A couple of comments on several different issues. But first, let's start with this. With respect to your joint meeting with Select Board and Recreation and Youth Commission, item B, discussion of use of various town-owned properties, I was asked to speak up for several people asking or to make the statement that they hope that only Harwich-based nonprofits can use town-owned property. It's been in the past that other nonprofits from other towns have been using, say, Brooks Park. So I was asked to speak up for them to suggest only town-owned nonprofits be involved with town-owned properties. Okay, so that's simple. Just to follow up, at last week's meeting, there was a reference to kids jumping off the roof at 204, and that's part of the reason why it needed to be re-shingled. Any further information on that comment?
I know nothing about people jumping off the roof at 204, but do you have any?
In years past, police have said they've responded to kids playing on and around the buildings.
Oh, okay,
Nothing recent to my knowledge.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was just a puzzling, out of the blue statement, kids jumping off the roof. I said, really? So, okay.
Some days we feel like we might want to jump off.
Long jump. That'd be a long jump.
Yeah, yeah.
I know in the past, the police chief reported that they had caught people jumping on the portables and getting onto the main roof.
Oh,
I think that might
Maybe
be
that's
where
what they
that
were.
comment came from, but I know it was addressed.
yeah, okay. So on to more serious business, and that is your issue, an old business, 8, number A. That is the effort to withdraw the existing petition to hold a special election to fill the vacancy on your board. So I am committed to following through with that. I have a petition to withdraw the petition, okay? And it takes a little bit of explanation. However, I spent 5 hours over the weekend along with Becky with our boards. We have 35 signatures of the existing signers of the original petition to withdraw the petition. So I think I'm for it. The people that sign it are for it. Most people I talk to are for it. How can I proceed? Do I need to get all 242 signatures? Do you need a percentage? Because at this rate, I'll be there for another 35 hours getting
Well-
signatures to withdraw the petition.
So on that note, we've gotten some updated information that we all need to have some opportunity to read through. Emily has shared with us late this afternoon. So we'll be looking at that information to figure out next steps.
Next step, yeah.
I think that, and any other member can speak to this, but I think that we would not be calling any election prior to April 9th if we do
Correct.
move forward with an election.
But the petition I'm saying is
I
to
know.
withdraw the petition.
Right.
Because it just doesn't make sense.
But we have legal counsel giving, has provided some additional information. It's fairly lengthy, and we all need to read through it.
So if you can give me feedback on what next steps I need to do in the petition to cancel the petition, I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have to wait till our next meeting where we have more discussion on that item, because I can't tell you
All
right now.
That's fine.
Michael?
If I can, and certainly your call, with the town clerk in the meeting without getting into the document that we haven't gotten into,
Right.
if we could at least answer the question, because it's my understanding that the answer is, Patrick, everybody has to sign it.
Wow.
And maybe just Emily could
Well,
just give that
yeah.
one answer, and then we can, if, totally up to you.
Well, the only reason I'm not, and Emily, you can speak to that, but, you know, the info that I started to read through does say that even if that happens, it's not necessarily appropriate. But, Emily, if you want to speak to any of that.
Okay. I don't want to slow Patrick down if we have a simple answer.
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk. Unfortunately, it's not a simple answer. I'll try to respond only to that very narrow question. As I did share with the board today, updates from legal counsel. The long and short of it is there's no definitive mechanism to legally withdraw a properly filed petition for a special election. However, the board might consider not calling one anyways, and again, that's really something that's discussed in depth in the update from council and that I'm happy to get into later during the agenda topic. And if the board were considering that action, evidence that other signers from the original petition felt similarly to what Patrick expressed as lead petitioner, that there's a desire to withdraw the petition, the board might consider that as evidence in your decision-making process. So even if Patrick was able to secure signatures from the 242 original signers, that wouldn't say that the petition could be legally withdrawn, but it could be evidence for the board to consider. So I wouldn't say there's a cutoff number, either for the board's decision-making process and not in terms of the legal framework, but it's just what the board finds persuasive.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
So I'll just proceed collecting signatures as best I can. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Let's try to move forward with this.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment and announcement? Hearing nobody?
Can you share off the minutes? I wasn't there, and I don't want to abstain from the rest of it.
Yeah, you want me to do the minutes now?
Is that what you just asked? Yeah, just share them off for the rest of the consent.
Yeah, sure, of course. Consent agenda, Madam?
Yes, please.
All right. I move that we vote to accept the Select Board meeting minutes for November 27th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I wasn't there, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So 3-0, one abstention.
I move that we vote to accept the resignation of Steve Bellotta from the Golf Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
I move that we vote to affirm the Harwich Hall of Fame nominees as recommended by the Interview Committee. Albert Rainio, Angelina Rainio-Chilaka, Alan P. Thompson, and Milton H. Welt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Don?
Yeah, Michael and I had discussed this. I'm going to put words in Michael's mouth, but these are four extraordinary individuals who are part of the fabric of Harwich, and I'm real proud to put them forward.
Thank you, Don. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Did you vote aye? I didn't hear you.
After extraordinary? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't, so 4-0.
Madam Chair, what was the vote on the resignation? B?
4-0.
4-0, yeah.
Thank you.
And then we did the minutes. So now we have our joint meeting with the Select Board and Recreation and Youth Commission. So Rec and Youth, if you want to join us.
If I could sit beside you?
Or sit wherever you'd like to sit, but thank you for coming tonight.
I'll share a mic with you anytime.
You're in striking distance.
Hi, how are
Sure,
you?
do.
Hi, Eric. How are you? So thanks. What? I know. Yeah, I know. It's two of you can sit up here where the mic is.
You need to call the board to order.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the meeting for the rec department to order.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Are you all voting? Are you opening up your meeting or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Aye.
Okay.
great.
Open.
Thank you. So thanks for joining us tonight. We wanted to have a meeting with all of you to talk about multiple items. We talked about the rec planning that I've attended a couple of your board meetings, have been very productive, and I think things are going well and that moving in the direction of all the different programs. So we can start there, Eric, I guess, if you want to talk about the programs you've developed and that the other volunteers have developed.
Can I use this one?
Sure.
Okay. Hi, I'm Eric Beebe. I'm the Recreation Director. Yes, we did develop quite a few winter programs this year and new ones since we've had an influx of volunteers, which has been great for the department. We're currently running K-1-2 basketball clinic. We're doing a travel basketball league. We have a new basketball clinic that runs on Wednesday and Friday nights. We have a new indoor soccer program at the 204. We have a new field hockey program at the 204. In January, we're going to be having a new pickleball youth clinic program. Next Friday, we start a new movie series night, family movie series night at the community center. And we have a new youth fitness program going on. So that's in addition to all our normal programming. So with the influx of volunteers that have come about from this, which has been great, we hope to keep expanding as we go, and we have some really good ideas for the spring as well. So
That's great.
we're moving forward well. Yep.
That's great. Do any board members have any questions on any of the programs or any of the items for Eric? Michael?
Related to the new programs?
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
It's nice to see some new programs and,
Yep,
and
absolutely.
good for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mike, Jeff? Don? So I think that, like you said, you've got a lot of new volunteers out of that, and it sounds like there's going to be quite the choice for the parents.
Yep.
And then the movie night sounds great, and I don't know if you're ever going to the adult movie night, but.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll move our way up, yeah.
And the pickleball program it's nice to hear the younger kids will have an opportunity to learn that too
Yep,
through the rec. So.
absolutely. Yep.
So then our next item, oh, sorry,
I'm
sure,
sorry.
yeah, no, go
It
ahead.
just came to my mind, Eric, thank you.
Sure, sure.
Is there a way, or do you track the attendance for all your programs in a
We
way?
do.
In a way that if one of us called up and said, hey, how'd the last 3 months go with your program?
Yeah.
We'd be able to see the attendance?
We go season by season, so, winter, spring, fall,
Yep.
summer. I could even send it to you guys. I have it from the last 15 years, so.
I'd like to see all 15, please.
Sure,
and
sure, you got it, yeah.
By tonight, if you don't mind.
No,
Just kidding.
yeah.
I think it would be great to compare and contrast, maybe
Sure.
like the last 2 years versus going forward.
Yep.
And that would be of interest to me. I don't
Sure.
know if it's interest to the rest of the board
Yeah, I
members.
could send that over.
That
Sure.
would be great. Thank
Yep,
you.
you got it.
That's a good idea.
Thanks, Joe.
Don, did you have
I
something?
still don't.
Oh, all right, I thought you were going to talk, so I
was
won't
just taking a
ask
deep
you
breath
again.
to stay awake.
And then, on the next note, discussion on use of various town-owned properties, which I just want to say, I thought that Bobby Brackett raised a really good point at your last meeting about the fact that, we have a limited number of properties available for use, and that does create a problem in trying to develop different programs, or even just in terms of people competing for time, whether it's at the community center or 204. So I just want to say that was a great point that he brought out, and, if you want to expand on that discussion, the board or anybody.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's mostly the indoor. We only have 2 gymnasiums in town that are available for our use, the community center and the 204. So, winter, we do a lot of basketball, but we are trying to expand that as much as possible. The more we can use the 204, the better. Right now, we're using either the community center gym or the 204 pretty much every day. So that's maxed out for the winter, but we do have quite a few selections for parents at the moment, so.
All right. Any questions on that? Yeah, go ahead,
Please.
Jeff.
Eric, thanks again.
Sure.
Is it, how much of the chunk of the 204 does pickleball? Is pickleball a pretty good chunk
Adult pickleball, yeah.
of the
adult-
204?
Yeah, adult pickleball is there from 8 to 12, Monday to Friday in the morning. They're also there Tuesday and Friday night for 2 hours each night. So that's the bulk of the programming. And then we have the indoor soccer, the field hockey, the youth pickleball there for youth programs.
And the pickleball, is that all Harwich residents, or is that some residents from outside of Harwich?
For indoor, it's all Harwich residents. At our outdoor season, we do allow in grandfathered non-residents, but there's less space indoors, so we do all residents.
Is there something in place where it is prohibited for other towns to come in and play on our courts, pickleball, inside?
No.
Or is it just how it worked out?
It's how it worked out for the rec program itself. If there was a group from out of town that wanted to come in and rent the gym, I'm sure they could. But for our program, our adult winter indoor pickleball program, it's resident only.
Because I know our kids go to other towns to enjoy the benefits of other rec departments. I
Sure.
was just curious to know if adults came, because we have such an unbelievable facility
Yeah.
over there. I was wondering if outside towns were coming in, but you answered it, so
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
And then on the topic of pickleball, the committee has also come up with a new policy to have a open court for people, so that a lot of people sign up for the leagues and such, and some people don't want to do that. And so with the introduction of additional courts, or do you have that already? Well, it's winter, so.
It'll be in place.
Yeah.
The new courts are just getting finished up. So when those are up and running for the spring and summer season, there's going to be at least 1 to 2 courts that'll be for open play. So when people are out there from 8 to 12 for our program, there will be courts open for people that just want to show up and play.
Right, and that's just a first come, first serve,
Yep.
kind of.
Yep.
So I think that's great, because that addresses a few people's, concerns that I had heard at your meeting and have had some of that
Sure.
feedback. And I think it's, a good policy, because not everybody wants to be in a league.
Yep.
So, any other questions on pickleball and those items? One other thing I did have, though, we talked about at your meeting whether or not there might be some shifting of times with pickleball, depending on at the 204. I think one of your members commented that, maybe people who are in that slot, which I think is like that 3-hour slot of 4 to 7, is that right? Or is it 5 to?
Yeah.
Because they can't really get there at 4, right? So maybe that could shift if you found yourself restricted for kids, they could maybe go into that slot and you could do a different slot for
Yeah, and
the
I'm meeting with our point person from adult pickleball next week to go over several things, including that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a good point, that maybe there's some flexibility there.
Sure.
Don,
Madam Chair,
now
we-
do you have something to
Yeah,
say?
Madam Chair, before we get more deeply into this discussion, since we're going past Eric pretty soon, can you just have the members of the Rec and Youth Commission identify themselves for the public so they know
Sure,
everybody
Don.
who's sitting here?
And unfortunately, we would have to ask that each go up to the microphone so that the people at home
They
could
got a
actually
mic right
identify
here.
them as well. You're fine,
Okay.
everyone else is gonna have.
You
it.
got the benefit of sitting at this table.
That's right.
You-
That's a big case.
You
Dave
could-
Nixon, Rec and Youth.
That's enough.
Thank you, Dave. You could have taken Michael's microphone, but it's all right.
The man said, go to the.
Brian Wentworth, Rec and Youth.
That's too close to me.
Phyllis Thomason, Rec and Youth.
Leah Mercurio, Rec and Youth.
John Mahan, Rec and Youth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Madam Chair, we had
Sure.
discussed at the previous meeting the pickleball nights be moved from 7 to 9. That frees up that 3 to 7 space to run anywhere from 1 to 2 different youth programs.
Okay.
That's that after-school hour, and I believe we had some agreement from pickleball for that.
Yeah,
time
and so
shift.
that's the discussion Eric's going to be having then. So it's 7 to 9?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other, Michael?
I definitely have some questions on pickleball, but it's more related to fees, so I'm willing to wait until the next.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're
And
going to
then
go
the
to...
only thing on this last one, discussion on use of various town-owned properties. I know that it's come up in discussion lately about renting to non-profits, and I think it was specific to Brooks Park and the school, and waiving fees. And I believe the town administrator had done some work. Are we gonna get into any list of what actually is in the care, custody, and control? Or do we really want to do that as part of the next conversation related to fees?
I think we could probably tie them together.
Thank you.
Yeah, John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an adjunct question to what Michael just asked, because I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but especially Brooks Park, that was gifted to the town. And there have been a number of properties that have been gifted with certain restrictions by the person who was gifting them, whether through their estate or whatever. I'd be interested in knowing that, too, because Brooks Park isn't the same circumstance as the middle school, which is now the 204. So with regard to who's eligible, I'd like to go back to the gift and the circumstances for which it was given, and to whom.
Thank you.
David?
There is a list of properties that have been put in the care and custody of the Recreation Department. If I had known you want, I have that list readily available. If I had known you want that, I can provide that for you. And that goes back to, I want to say 03 or 04, when that list was compiled by our historian, Frank Crowley. I can provide that for you.
Great, thank you, David.
So,
You're specifically interested, though, in Brooks Park.
Yeah,
Well,
because that was gifted by the Brooks family originally to the town, and I'm not sure what circumstances under which it was given, because
well, it's,
they're
I'll give you a
unrestricted.
starting point.
Yeah,
So,
okay, thank you.
and
That'd be
again,
helpful.
that's similar to South Harwich, property down there that a few years back, we turned care and custody over to the Board of Selectmen.
Property was that?
Just South Meeting House Church?
No, not the church, not South Harwich. It would be
West Harwich?
West Harwich.
Oh, the
Road property.
the rec building.
The rec building.
Yeah,
So,
So, yeah.
there were a couple of things. Yeah.
okay. Thank you, that would be good information to have.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Just, and I know the big topic here is Brooks Park and what happened with a nonprofit. And I know I've looked at different field cards. Some say rec, some say parks, some say schools, some say all properties that we have, and the longer than I want to admit that I've been on the rec commission, have always been the director or primarily the director has been in charge of scheduling. Parks, beaches, squares, and fields, obviously. This one here is definitely something that's outside the purview. I think it's an easy solution, and by putting on the application, that it can't be sublet, it can't be leased out to anybody that's a for-profit.
Right.
Okay? But as long as I've been here, it's always been that's who it's been scheduled through. And in the 20 years that I've been, I believe, give or take a couple, there's never been an issue. Now, I'm not saying it's never happened. It's the first time, I think, Dawn, that it's been brought to someone's attention. So that's the way it has been since some of us have been on there.
Right.
And it seems to be working, for the most part, pretty well.
Pretty
Very well, I should say.
And then, like you said, the application has been clarified, so
And I
that,
believe Eric's working on that as we speak.
right. Any questions?
I would just add that that same organization also rented the gymnasium at the school. And I'm not sure if it, where the letter should come from, but obviously our counterparts at the school should adopt the same policy, and that is town property, and that policy was based on town property. So one of the organizations, either the Board of Selectmen or whomever the town administrator thinks is best to do it, should deliver the message with the policy, because it's related to town-owned properties.
And the school is a lease.
That's correct.
So we'll make note of that. Any other specifics on Brooks Park or any other particular properties of the town?
Mine's just related to the next discussion.
Okay. So then we'll go on to our discussion on fees related to all recreation programs. And this goes back to the different discussions on who's responsible for setting the fees. And so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, David?
Madam Chair, through Madam Chair, I'd like to make the following statement about the fees. 204 particularly is a municipal property, so I think that it would be advisable for the Board of Selectmen to set the fees for the 204, and then Recreation can then pass that fee on to the people that are gonna rent it. It might solve a lot of confusion. If that doesn't come from me, that comes from someone else on the outside that has looked at this problem and offered a solution. So now I'm offering the solution.
No, I think that's a logical solution. I mean, that's just my opinion, but where there's different programs that are being run by rec, I mean, I know that there's even been just confusion over who's doing what at that building and who's controlling what, because we have different things, cultural and then some rec programs. I think it can get a little muddy. I think that's probably not a bad idea. It seems to streamline it, to keep it with the town side. Do board members have any opinion on that?
Madam Chair, if I
Sure.
could. I understand the need to streamline more than anybody. I think the rec has an expectation to set fees that can meet the standards of what our parents can afford. While we do offer scholarships and opportunities and stuff, putting the fee structure outside of the rec department could create issues, leaving certain families out. We do have around 30% low-income family population for Harwich Elementary School. I think it's important that the rec department be able to keep those fees as low as possible for Harwich residents.
That's a good point. And so, you know, maybe part of that, if we're going to try to clarify and we take over that piece, that we look for what the rec program is charging for those comparable programs, so that we don't set something unrealistic.
Sure, or if there is just some sort of flatline fee that the rec could then always fall back on, knowing to use the gym, it is this price.
For any
for
kind of
whatever
rec program, yeah.
So any program that we run there, this is the set price, and we have to set our fees based on that.
That makes sense. Anybody else? Don?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, just as an overview of the whole discussion as we move forward, because we did get Chapter 40, Section 22F in our packet. I get that the Rec and Youth can establish fees and everything, but it does say, however, that in the case of a board or officer appointed by an elected board, the fixing of such fees shall be subject to the review and approval of such elected board.
So would you?
You have the right to establish them, but we have the right to review them and approve them.
So are you suggesting that every time a rec program be created, the fees be brought to you?
I'm just quoting you from...
Right, no, I understand that, and I appreciate that, but I think maybe that's another topic that could be discussed, because it's not extremely clear.
That's kind of why I'm saying this, because
Right.
other boards within town also establish fees for things, and so do departments. But
Of course.
I mean, we don't generally fix the rates or establish them in most of those circumstances, but we do get the right to approve, except where they're specifically excluded from that discussion, like the Board of Health has its own section of law that allows them to establish fees for certain things, because that's part of their jurisdiction under state law.
John?
My understanding, and doesn't mean it's right, but it's the understanding that I have, is that revolving fund fees were pretty much set by director/commission. General fund fees, beaches is the one that jumps out, and I think that may be the only one that we do that goes to the general fund, was always approved by the Board of Selectmen, because I remember as being chair, bringing those in with the backup material and whatnot. But I thought the revolving fund, because they're so fluid and up and down based on participants and whatnot, I'm not sure you could keep up with it and still get the program started off on the date it's supposed to be. So
Right.
just a
And
little bit
I
more.
do remember this board, although I'm not, I don't think you were on this board at the time, but I remember us having a conversation about revolving fees over the last couple of years. And to that point, I mean, I think there are some who wish there were less revolving funds. And for me, especially with rec, that revolving fund makes sense, because if, you know, Eric's trying to structure programs and trying to expand things and such, there needs to be access to those funds. And so others may feel differently, feel free to speak up, but I agree. I remember that discussion on revolving funds versus general funds. Michael?
I would like to hear the town administrator him weigh in on John's comment. Do you agree? And I know you did a fair amount of research
Sure,
in getting
thank
that law to us, so I'd like to get an overview from the town administrator, and then I have other comments.
Thank you, and as Select Board Member Howell referenced, you should have in your packet the relevant section of Chapter 40, Section 22F, the town meeting vote that adopted it, and then the comparison to the rules and responsibilities assigned to the Rec and Youth Commission. So in the statute itself, there's no reference to type of fee, it just says fees. So there's no distinction in 22F, whether it's revolving fund or general fund. It's any fees created by a body appointed by an elected body.
Oh, sorry, John.
Point of clarification, if I may, Madam Chair. Dawn mentioned could or maybe review the fees or confirm the fees. Is that what that says, Mr. Town Administrator? That they have to? Like, they have to approve every fee, or they have obviously they have the right to?
However, then in the case of a board or officer appointed by an elected board, the fixing of such fee shall be subject to the review and approval of such elected board. So it says shall.
Thank you.
Not may.
So, Michael? Michael?
Okay. I have no interest, and thank you for your opinion on that, in getting involved in every program that you do. But where this fell apart for me was the pickleball. And Eric, you know that. You were before us a year and a half or so ago, and the board expressed its displeasure in what we were charging for the amount of time that we were given the pickleball, and asked you to come back with a more reasonable fee for the amount of time spent. And I get to that because 204 Sisson Road is a building that town meeting, and I'm just going to say barely supported, and the finance committee was unsure of. And we made a promise to look at everything in that building. And I did get to be the liaison to Rec and Youth, and you've all done an outstanding job, in my opinion. But the board should have the right to look at, and when fees are set, the cost of those fees. So in that building at $75 for the amount of time for pickleball, and I should say it, I'm not picking on pickleball, but it's less than $1.80, I'm gonna throw that number out, per visit, per person. And it does not come close to covering the cost associated with that building. So that's where I find it important that this elected body look at that. And then certainly open to any conversation on youth programming. And every year we look at fees from other departments and we don't question them. So they come before us as a group when they're done, and we generally don't question. We take the recommendation of the department head. But it gives the public a chance to see what they are. And it gives the public a chance to see that we are being responsible with their money. So there has to be some mechanism for this board to approve fees. And I would look at fee waivers. I'm the fee waiver no guy, because there's a cost to doing business. This is not like, especially in 204 Sisson Road or Brooks Park, our ball fields. There is no non-cost to those fields. So more importantly to me in this conversation was understanding that we're the only ones that can waive fees. So going before Rec and Youth for fee waivers, it's my understanding, based on that law, that we are the only ones, and correct me if I'm wrong, that can waive fees. And that, again, is for the public to be able to see what we're doing and why. We did waive some fees. I think I was on vacation. Most part. We recognize, and then we give some discounts on fees. But there is a mechanism as to why we're not waiving fees. And I certainly appreciate the talk about the kids and the lower income families, and we don't want to be the town that jacks our fees up, but we have to be responsible. And I know that the pickleball not coming back before us created a lot of angst when we started to talk about it, and that's another thing that we would like to avoid, is having people be upset in the 24th hour or even the 30th hour when we're talking about coming back and getting a second check from them. So the fee waiver part of it and the setting of fees, I think it's important that this board does it. Revolving fund fees, John, I see your point, and certainly there has to be something we can come up with where we're not looking at all of the revolving fund fees. But we really have to look at the costs of doing this stuff and the cost of maintaining the fields and who's using them and when. I think that's important. And I can't remember too many rec meetings, except for when we talked about closing the beaches early, where a lot of public attended until most recently when a lot of parents got involved. But this meeting, not a lot of people attend either, but Bill generally writes it up for us, and it is on YouTube and watched later. So it is giving the public the information.
Jeff?
If I could, oh.
No, go, please,
So
Lynn.
just in response to that, if, how you said that you did have a lot of parents show up, part of that was a lack of programming. So to suddenly now have this uptick of programming and say, here it is, it's available, but then also have to say, but we have to wait till all of our fees get approved, or so on and so forth. I feel like that is counterintuitive to what the parents are requesting. And I 100% see your point for being cost effective. If there's a suggestion or a solution that you have to help the rec commission get those fees in front of you in a timely manner to be able to then have them approved, that's definitely a discussion I think the board would be happy to have.
If I may, those programs that you're recently established really are revolving fund programs, correct? And that is a conversation that I'm absolutely willing to have. We look at long-term, and I keep picking on pickleball. I'm going to take a beating on that, but
I think it's
that's
okay.
a long-term program.
Program, so.
Yeah, that's a long-term and a multi-year program. That's not a new program. That's not something that we're doing for the kids or the adults. So I would say, and again, it blocks out of a building that isn't the community center a fair amount of time. And we did tell the public that we were going to come back to them with fees.
Sure.
Fee waivers to me are more important than a lot of the fees that you're speaking about, revolving fund, but there has to be a mechanism, because I agree, we don't want to hold you back. People are happy that you're coming up with all these new programs.
Jeff?
It can go.
Are you sure? David?
Madam Chair, through Madam Chair, to the selectmen. That was elegant, the way you put it. I couldn't do that. But I want to ask a question. We're a $78 million corporation now, maybe even more. You're going to spend your time looking at fees for Special Olympics when they come before us to ask us for a waiver.
That's what I understand.
I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. And they do come before us for a waiver. Now, I'm not a waiver guy either. Ask anybody on the board that's been around for a while. But there are certain things that we do give waivers to. And I really can't wrap my head around this board, the select board of the town of Harwich, regulating fees that may be $15, $20, maybe $150 or $200 in the entire mix. That's going to be the difference. I just can't see it.
If I can respond.
Michael?
Yes.
And you and I are close to each other.
So to answer your question, yes.
Good.
Because it is the law that was quoted. That's number one. I didn't write the law. It's a state law. And I was only one vote, maybe, at town meeting when the town voted to have it be that way. So the answer is yes. Can it change? Should it change?
You have the ability to do that. You're the select board of the town of Harwich.
Town meeting has the ability to do that.
You can put an article before the town. You have the ability to change that.
If I could respond, just because it's Dave. If you're asking if I want to relinquish my right to fee waivers to you, no.
That's too bad. You're mean-spirited.
Well, you gotta do it when he's on vacation.
There you go.
Jeff.
I think John, did you have something?
It's okay, I'll go after you, Jeff.
Okay. Just a point of, you're right, smack in the middle now. Just point of
There's
clarification.
fucking nobody at this meeting.
There's nobody at the meeting?
Can you, online, mute, please go on mute, somebody's coming through to our meeting.
I think there's
Michael,
plenty of people.
just so I understand where you're coming from, when you're talking about reviewing fees for the rec department, are you talking about the entire rec department or just now the 204 building? Because they've been doing fees forever over at the rec department. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't at least review them, but I don't think it should be something that we have to take a look at every one. But on the 204 building, I think I could support where you're going with that, because it's a bit of a different entity for the town. So what are you saying?
I'm not saying that I want to review all their fees, but I am saying that the law that was provided to us today, and my understanding, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, or Eric, the Rec Commission used to come before us once a year with their fees and any fee increases. Now, that certainly wouldn't apply to revolving fund, special programs, but all of your other fees, beach stickers, everything, they come before us. I don't want to, in reading the section on Rec and Youth in the charter, it doesn't say anything about Rec and Youth Commission establishing fees. It probably should. I don't want to micromanage you guys establishing fees. You should do that. And this, I don't have any interest in saying, well, they're starting a kids' movie night and we should charge this for it. That should be a recommendation of them. And I would go as far as saying that fee and those revolving fund fees, I'm not that interested in. That belongs to that committee. The law states different.
Understood.
And the town meeting vote states different.
With respect to new programs starting at the 204, any program at the 204, is that, do you feel differently about that?
I feel like that's a separate conversation because that building is not controlled by Rec and Youth. And I have some questions to the town administrator about the structure of that building and what we're doing based on the promises that we made to town meeting and what we were going to do with that building. So who uses it and when? We never anticipated that only Rec and Youth would use that gymnasium. And I know there was a memo created on who's doing what now, but I think we have to move forward and decide who's in charge of 204 Sisson and when it gets used, and the cost of that building.
Well, last thing I'll say for the record is, I think you all do a fabulous job of making sure that pricing reflects what our population demands. So I wouldn't have any interest in getting into the trenches and micromanaging what you all already do very well. But the 204 building, I agree with you, Michael, is something that I think we need to get a better handle on.
John?
Madam Chair, and this wasn't my initial topic, but I think the confusion comes from page 1 of the Recreation and Youth page on the Selectmen's Handbook. It states the Rec and Youth Commission for the town of Harwich is a 7-member commission whose primary responsibilities are setting policy and fees. So, and I understand there's another paragraph elsewhere that says A overrules B, but I think that's where some of the confusion may have come from. The other thing in regards to 204 in the block that in the morning, and Michael said they're using a lot of time, I'd be interested, I don't have the answer, are there other groups that would want that gym from 8 to 12 or 8 to 11 in the morning? And if you just want to be careful.
Right.
You know, if you don't want it empty, a little bit less full is better than nothing empty. So just, so everybody knew that.
Right, thank you. Phyllis, let me just go to Phyllis.
I just want to point out a couple things about the difference between adult programs and youth programs. Youth programs, they sign up, X number of youth are going to come to the program. Adult programs are drop-in programs. So because you pay a fee for a certain amount of time doesn't mean you're there the whole time. You pay a fee for the golf course, it doesn't mean you're on the golf course the whole time. You pay a fee for your slip in Saquatucket. Your boat is there, you own that slip for that whole time, but that's a totally different type of fee. But adults, pretty much every program is drop-in. So it's a different entity than saying how many people sign up. So I think over 100 people signed up for pickleball.
Oh, yeah,
Well over 100 people signed up. They are not all there every day, every moment. Sometimes there might be 4 people there. They have the opportunity to go, but that doesn't mean they can go, or they have the physical ability to go, or they have a job. So it's not a set amount of time for everybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So meaning, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So back to the question on, okay, so it's $75, and I'm just making things up. $75 for 8 weeks. I sign up, I pay that fee. I may know, like, okay, so it's 8 to noon, and there's maybe a couple days I can get there, maybe 10 to 11 or something, right? And so to your point, $75 may sound low, but the amount of times I'm able to get there. But then again, there could be other people who are there for the full time, correct? Is
That's
that
the nature of
right?
the type of program
But that's
it
your
is.
point, right? Is
Right.
some people are paying 75 and maxing it out, as
Right.
if somebody sat on their boat all day and they're slipping Saquatucket Harbor, which I don't know
Or
why
the
you would
golf
do that.
course.
but-
I mean, it's the same
Right.
thing. You pay a fee, you
Right.
have access to that golf course in theory.
Right.
Anytime it's open.
Right.
Yes, you have to sign up for your particular time slot. But it's just a different, and the same with adult basketball and adult volleyball. Whoever shows up is there that day.
Yeah.
They paid their fee. If they show up twice for the whole season, they paid their fee.
Okay,
If they show up every day, it's just different.
let me go. Don?
This isn't about that. It's actually a bigger discussion. I think Michael has heard me say this about 500,000 times. The purpose of the revolving funds, we didn't even use them until early 2000s, anywhere. The purpose of them, when we started doing them, in application to here particularly, was, okay, so we normally field 4 softball teams, but now we're fielding 6, and we need the elasticity to be able to pay for the extra uniforms and such. My concern is we're riding with over $1.5 million worth of revolving funds in various programs, not just rec and youth, golf, harbors. And there should be a mechanism, because it's daunting for me to hear people delineate, well, those are revolving funds, as opposed to, they're all town funds. They were generated for use of a town facility of some sort, regardless of where they were. And there should be the same kind of oversight involved in them. And personally, when you have a track record, the program's been going on for 6, 7, 8 years, and you know that you normally get 85 kids. Sometimes it's 78, sometimes it's 92, but you normally get somewhere around that. The revolving fund should be constructed so that maybe 15 or 20% of what it is right now is a reserve, but the rest of it should be planted in direct accounts as an appropriated something or other at town meeting, because you know what it's going to be generally. It shouldn't be in perpetuity that as of this date forward, we're always going to be charging these programs as revolving and those programs as not. That's always been my concern, is that it's growing and it's growing exponentially, and people actually say out loud, well, those aren't town funds, those are revolving funds. And that can't be the way we look at this, because they were generated through town facilities.
John, that was a directive set up by a then Board of Selectmen.
I get it, but it has grown massively over the period of time from when it first was initiated to the point where it is now.
John?
Madam Chair, it has grown, not excessively, it has grown based on recommendations from previous town accountants and town administrators and vote of town meeting. So this isn't arbitrarily done. This was recommended to us by those in the know. You are right. We started with this, the one year we went to this, and then the town accountant and the town administrator came back to us again the next year and said, bump it again. So these things are not done arbitrarily by the Rec and Youth Commission or the director.
Nor am I trying to make you guys look like the villains. It is not that at all, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
It's-
absolutely.
It's at a place that isn't close to where it started.
Dave just talks, he doesn't raise his hand.
Michael? He's sitting next to his.
Just a couple of responses. John, the answer is, and I think it was you that said it, there are plenty of other groups that want to use that gymnasium.
In the morning?
And my point is, yeah, I mean, we've got another school, a charter school that wants to use it for a basketball program. That would be a during-the-day program. How would we ever know if we just block that space off? And if if it is a drop-in program, great. All I need to see is the cost of the space and the fee, because this is not the community center. And the community center was built for one way. This building was salvaged for another thing. This building was salvaged with telling the residents that we were going to do the best we could for a cost recovery on the space. And that's how town meeting voted it.
Brian?
To respond to a couple of things that you already said too, Mike. If the 204 is under the jurisdiction of the select board, to not, and I think this goes for pickleball too, to not slow down the time frame, because that's, you know, one of the parent group's big complaints is time. To not slow that down, is there a way to figure out, okay, the gym at 204 costs X amount an hour, that's the flat fee, then go from there. So then it can be set really quickly, then the signups can happen, then the programs can happen. Is that a potential solution that could come? Just figure out what the base price is that covers your costs for per hour. And then, so say there's pickleball for 4 hours, there's field hockey for 2 hours, okay, that's gonna cost that per hour. What do we need to charge then? What's the base rate?
So, go ahead.
I think it's very reasonable, and I would look towards Eric and ask Eric to put together the cost recovery with the town administrator and the other department head that's in that building, and then present to us for that fee recommendation. The professional should set the fee, not us, but all factors should go into the setting of the fee. And that goes into, because I know recently we had a baseball league that was interested in doing some programs in there, and initially they were told no. But I would just say that this board has to have something to do with that building, because this board is what told town meeting what we were going to do in there, and we have to show them some progress. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
Well, and I think that, but to sort of piggyback on that, it goes back to Leah's point too, right? So it's like, okay, so if the gym is gonna cost, again, making up
Yep.
$200 for 4 hours or something like that, you know, and depending on the program. Now, if there's gonna be a rec program for kids, and out of that fee and whatever else it costs you to build that program, it's not comparable to what other things are. It's almost gotta be a two-tiered.
Right.
You know, it's gotta be something that fits the rec program pricing for families. But if you've got another you've got another entity, adult program or something else that's gonna do other things, I think you've gotta be able to say, well, that's a little different than serving the youth. Even, because again, we're talking about 204, which is different than your purview of what you're trying to do in creating programs from, 0 to 100. So I think it's like a tiered system.
And if I can, I think I just want to, again, speak on what Eric said earlier. We are extremely limited for space for youth during the winter, which is when kids desperately need it
Right.
on Cape Cod. So the easier we could make access to the 204 gym for these kids through the youth programs or through rec programs, absolutely the better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still waiting for the administrator through the department heads to come back to us with some expansion in that building. We have a cafeteria that we haven't even talked about. That's a large space, and when I went to school there, we played soccer in that room. Maybe we weren't supposed to. But, and we also have the music room, which is a good-sized room in that building. So there's a lot more space in that building than the gymnasium. A lot more space. So again, I'm still waiting for the plan on how we're going to move forward with some of this stuff, and someone to present what we can use. And that really needs to come from the town administrator and the department heads. But there's a lot of space in that building.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'll make it quick, because you've all mentioned pieces of what I was interested in saying, and I think, for me, I feel so strongly, this is just my opinion, that it's the responsibility of our town to provide these value-added services for 1-year-old to 150-year-old, if we've got those in our town. And we can't look at our fee structure the way a private business would look at fee structure. That is, in my opinion, not on the table, and it's not an option. Dooley, you made a great point, which is the 204 building, even though, we made promises to the voters, which I wholeheartedly want to fulfill. But that is a building that's going to make our kids happy. It's going to make our adults happy, our seniors happy. If it's a rec program, I can see having a two-tiered fee schedule. If an outside entity wanted to come in and rent that space, fair game, because it's different. But I also feel if it takes away from things that would benefit our community, I would maybe not support it. So from what I'm hearing from Lee is we're out of space in the winters.
Yeah.
So it'd be really hard for me to support anything coming in and taking space away from our residents, our kids, our seniors. But I'm just going to say it one more time. The fee structure needs to be doable for everyone in the town of Harwich. And pickleball is not going to drive the 204 building to the profit land. I can promise that. But every little bit counts, and I get that. And I like what you said about looking at other revenue streams and developing a strategic plan to move forward with this building so that when we do rent it to kids at a rate that's consistent with the rec department rates, wherever else they're doing their programming, we might be able to offset it with some other revenue streams that we generate.
True, and there's also, you know, the intersection of some of those other rooms that Michael's referring to that may be tied up for cultural purposes. So those two things also have to intersect, so. Dave?
Madam Chair to Madam Chair, would you put that on the agenda to discuss a two-tier process, please, for our next meeting?
204, who's setting the fees at 204?
Well, yeah.
We're going to be
I'm
setting the
waiting for
fees
my
at
brother
204.
David this time.
Right, I believe it was requested that the director and town administrator put that system together.
However, I'd still like to have a discussion.
So
on
when,
the
yeah, so
agenda.
when we figure out the tiered system or the pricing in general, we'll share that obviously with your committee and Eric, so that everybody has that information.
Right.
Joe, does that, hold on, Don. Does that sound
Yep, I have that in my notes.
perfect? Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Only saying this because it was brought up here already. I'm just going to make the pitch here if we're talking two tiers. If you're talking a charter school, you're talking a public school. They get money that comes with the student, and we start talking about assessing people. Just to be clear, that would be assessing a public school to use a facility. It's not the same as a for-profit or a program. I don't know what the outcome would be, but I'm just saying that those kids are generally, because people have a misunderstanding about it, charter schools are not private schools, they're public schools.
Of course.
That's my only comment.
I was going to go to Phyllis unless, John, did you have a follow-up on that? Phyllis?
A couple things I just want to say. I think that there was a discussion that was had at the rec meeting that maybe wasn't, and you mentioned it, Julie, but, I mean, Madam Chair, that there's only 2 gyms in this town for use, and neither one is actually run by the rec department. As I believe, the rec department has no indoor space besides an office. The rec, right? Yeah, and everything, community center owns the other gym, and cultural center has 1 gym. Anyway, this is something I printed off from the cultural center website with a fee schedule that was approved by the selectmen, right? And it says municipal use, it says rental no charge on here.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm going to take a stab at that. That would be if the town wanted to rent the municipal building.
Right.
It
Is the
says-
rec,
but
is
no,
the
it
rec
says it
department
lists-
not?
It lists the
town?
different uses.
You're not the end user.
Well, I'm not sure. Can we see that?
For rec programs. Right, for a municipal building.
Yeah, if a municipality was using, meaning us, no charge, no charge. For profit, 500 for a day, 250 for a half day. So, and then it breaks it down from nonprofit and resident. So that's how I would take that. Municipal would be if we had some use for it.
Right, that was the presentation that was made relative to that schedule.
But municipal is.
You got to just talk at the microphone so people can hear you.
Municipal, maybe that's what you meant it to mean, but it means all the parts of the town. It does say gymnasium, parentheses, recreation, on your chart. I mean, you can revisit it, but that's,
Yeah, we should probably clarify that.
right. And you have you have charges for profit, for nonprofit. And could you clarify when earlier it was said nonprofit only for Harwich recreation? Only Harwich nonprofits can use space for recreation?
So,
That was
I think
about
that was
the,
something different.
yeah, that was different
Right.
when we were talking about Brooks
Right.
Park.
right.
Yeah, what?
I believe that was a private resident that spoke about people that had reached out to him and requested that that be the case. That wasn't
Oh,
discussed by
okay. Okay, I
us.
was just trying to clarify that. But anyway, this does exist. And the other thing, I'd like to recommend that the 204 have a facilities committee.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a discussion point. I mean, we do have staff who are overseeing the building, right, between, so, I mean, I guess we can have that discussion. I mean, we already have a facilities committee over at the community center.
I'd like to request that if there is a facilities committee, that a commission member be a part of that.
Yeah,
piece.
that would make sense if we were going to create one. I don't know that we're in a hurry to create more committees, but, but I appreciate the feedback, so.
Because I think it would be beneficial for the building itself,
Mhm.
because there are a lot of eyes that I don't think parts of the building get noticed,
Mhm.
and I think it would be beneficial.
Okay, we'll take it under consideration. Thank you. Leah? Oh, John.
Quickly, and last comment, it's come to our attention, and I didn't realize it till the last meeting. The reason we're so short on gyms is because the school district has put on astronomical fees to use the town gyms, which I find ironic, because they use all our fields and courts, and so that's a big problem, because the person who was there speaking about it said in Brewster, they have gyms everywhere. Every school has a gym, and they use every school.
Right.
So that's an interesting
Yeah, no.
dynamic that we should keep in mind as well.
Right, and maybe that's another discussion. Anybody else have any other comments? Okay,
Well,
so, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Eric, could I ask you about the online status?
Sure.
The signups and the payments. I remember at a meeting that I attended maybe 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the difficulty with the ability for people to make payments.
Yep.
So where does the ability for our residents to sign up online for programming and then pay online for programming?
So, yep, we signed on with the MyRec system, as I said at the commission, the rec commission meeting. We have been meeting with them and training with them ongoing every week. We're set for a opening of the website, I believe, January 8th.
Okay.
The only thing that's going to be, so that'll be for all registrations, rosters, calendars, planning. The only thing that's a hitch in that is the actual online payment. We're working out with the financial department. That may be closer to the end of January, because we have to wait on them to be ready for that part. So,
Would it make sense to roll it out as one?
we looked into that, but we're getting a lot of pressure to get it out there so people can start registering, at least registering on there, and then.
Payment pending kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
I did follow up on that internally to see if we could do anything to expedite that process, because it would be better if it could be rolled out
All at
together.
once, sure.
So I'll follow up again. John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so far, we've been stuck on a fees discussion. At least one of your members has actually said to me something relative to volunteers doing any kind of help with you. And I know that you have Corey checks and other stuff. Where are we with developing a larger pool of resources with that? Because you can do anything you want to with the portal and recruit people and to come to these programs, but if you don't have enough people to facilitate them, that would be the choke point. So have you made any progress with actually starting with a pool of people who are willing to coach that have to get quarried and other stuff?
Yeah, we've had, I'd say at least, other than the new programs we're running right now, there's several volunteers for each of those programs. I've interviewed and quarried, I'd say upwards of 25 people since that first commission meeting. So and it seems like people are going to be coming back, for more. It's not one and done. So we're really encouraged by that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And is there a way for people to get in touch with you if they want to participate in that for the future?
So currently, all the volunteer applications, the Corey forms, are all online. It'll be even more accessible once the new MyRec system comes in. They'll be able to submit it online, schedule an appointment with me. I'd like to sit down with every volunteer before they come on board. but it'll be easier to facilitate that through the new system. Yep.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions, any follow-ups? No? Joe, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Not on this topic.
Okay. All right, so do you want to adjourn your meeting?
There's one more
Oh.
discussion related to.
Oh, did I miss something? Where?
So the last one is relating.
Oh, sorry, the DOT right of entry, yep.
So, Madam Chairs, where that comes from is, as our Director of Public Works is working on the Route 28 sidewalk project down by the harbor, and to the comments earlier by one of the members of the Rec and Youth, the town's assessing database, which I know is not the end-all be-all, but it is the first point of contact, identifies 3 properties that are under the control of some version of recreation. One of those 3 is the overlook at Witchmere, and so the question that you have coming up, item A, your next item, relative to that project is the property owner per se needs to approve the right of entry onto that particular property. So not wanting to assume anything, wanted to have that discussion with both parties, and then you'll go right into that next item under new business A.
Great, thanks.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a
No, you're going to have
Go
that
ahead.
conversation.
I'll make a motion to approve the approval of the request for the overlook sidewalk.
Moved and seconded. Oh, sorry, it's your.
It's all right, Julie.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Great.
Unanimous.
Thank you, we
5-0
appreciate it.
Guys
vote?
have it.
Yes.
Perfect, that's
Madam
great.
Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those
Aye.
Aye.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
taking the time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And to the board, thank you guys.
Next
Thank
time
you.
you waive a fee, you get to pay for it. He gets me on the hook all the time.
Got it.
He used to be like Michael. Was the time.
Send you all my vacations.
Michael making my wallet a lot lighter.
All right, so we'll go on to our new business.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
I move that we approve the easement request from MassDOT for an easement and right of entry for the Route 28 sidewalk project.
Second.
As presented.
Second.
Moved
So
and
it
seconded.
no
yeah.
longer requires right of entry, that was just done by Rec and Youth, so it would just be on the first matter referenced.
Okay,
That's what I read from.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And who was the second? Thank you.
Don. All in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Next
Madam
item.
Any
Chair?
questions for our
Oh,
director
sorry.
while we
Yep.
have him?
If I may, just briefly, thank you for that. I just want to take a second and let you know that this project, and those that may be viewing this, was initiated by this Board of Selectmen back in 2015. We got virtually nowhere with Mass DOT until January of 2021. This project is now slated, which is a sidewalk on the south side of Route 28 from Bank Street to Saquatucket Harbor, and a small piece to Gorham Road from the out of Cape Health on the north side. This project is now slated to be advertised this coming August with construction to start fall of 2024.
Wow.
That is an unheard of pace. From January 2021 to construction in Mass DOT world, I've never seen anything move faster.
No.
And it's been a long wait. It certainly doesn't feel fast, but, you know, it wouldn't have happened if the board really didn't want to see this and kept at it.
Well, thank you for all your work on it, too. Michael?
Just publicly thank Paul Manning, a resident that put $250,000 of his own money into this project to get it done, too. And then, Link, since you stood up, when are we going to go to the public and show them what's going to happen? Or is that Mass DOT? Because there's no drawings on the land takings. I'm not sure. I actually know that several members of that road haven't been told anything yet. When do we get to show people what this looks like?
That was last January 18th when DOT had their 25% design hearing, public hearing on both projects, the West Harwich Tip project as well as the sidewalk. Since this is a state road, I've had a few inquiries from some of the residents because they got the same forms that you're being asked to sign, sometimes with just a a very rudimentary sketch and not a lot of explanations. So I have got inquiries. Unfortunately, I am not able to really discuss the matter with the property owners because they follow the federal guidelines where this is all the property owners. Mass DOT has a team of people that deal with the right-of-way acquisition. That is in process. They've accepted the final design. I asked the project manager if I could simply send the whole plans, like you were saying, to one of the abutters who asked for the entire set of plans. I had no problem. They sent them the plans in front of their house. Tom Courier is the project manager. He's been absolutely fabulous to work with. He has been very responsive to anybody I have sent his way. So if you have anybody that's got some specific questions, I can put them in touch with Mr. Courier.
So direct people to you. I know the state came down last week and met with one of the larger property owners and talked about what trees would need to be moved, where the utility pole would need to be moved. And I know they made a few concessions. So I know, I'm not sure the woman's name, but she came out and the house by the church with the big white fence that takes up a fair amount, goes to the overlook, almost to the overlook. But they made a lot of concessions, but it was a bit of an eye-opener on how much had to be moved. So I would encourage us at least to get as much information out as we can. And a couple of the property owners have said that they're not signing anything, nor giving anyone any right to go on their property. So I don't know if that matters or not.
Well, the only permanent easements I was aware of on the project were all aerial in nature, much as the town's been asked to sign. They've kept the footprint in the design process as close to the road as possible. In fact, the road is not moving. They're simply building a 5-foot sidewalk, which can all be done within Mass DOT's right-of-way. They do have required temporary construction easements for most of the properties, which gives DOT the right to, like if the fence was in the way of construction but could go back, they usually remove and stack or remove and put back. And everyone's being paid for those easements. It's not like I've done in the past and I've asked property owners for donations. They have a process where there's appraisals and everybody gets what they consider market value out of those appraisals.
Thank you, Link.
Thanks, Link.
Thank you.
Next item, which is item B, discussion regarding a human resource position to be added to the vote at annual town meeting 2024. This is something I thought we should put back on the agenda because we talked about this last year and we had different ideas of how it would be structured, but I think it's important to start having these conversations of what we plan on bringing to town meeting. So I don't know, Joe, if you want to provide any feedback, otherwise I can talk about it.
My understanding is that the board wanted to visit the topic of whether, what the position would be, how high, and all of that. What you have in your packet is what the assistant administrator and I worked on last year. It's been re-energized. But I really understood this to be a policy discussion of the board.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
And I'm happy to start unless any one of you want to talk about it. Yeah, so I think that this position, you know, our discussion previously was a different thought, but understanding now why there are certain limitations, I think this is a position that is important for town employees. I also think it's important for administration in the sense of being able to separate to a certain degree and have somebody who can work with employees, whether it be for benefits, whether it be personnel matters, et cetera. And I think that this person would probably, excuse me, report under the assistant town administrator, who also reports to the town administrator. So the overall draft, I think, is a good start, and I would open it up to any other discussion. Excuse me.
I guess first question is, why would they report to the assistant town administrator?
Excuse me. Well, that's just my starting point, because I guess it would depend on what the board sees as, thank you. What the board sees as the structure for the overall pay, et cetera, for the position. So, I mean, I could see that being a different structure, but that's what I have in my head starting out. Because I don't think that we would want to put this HR person above the assistant town administrator, so maybe it's equal, and I'm just, you know, again, another reason why it's on the agenda to start to have that discussion of how we structure it. Is this funny? Like, I can't open it. Oh, no, now I got it. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Michael?
I was gonna let Jeff talk.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Jeff?
I think it's all positive. I think it's vital to the success of our town at this point. Our town is, as someone mentioned, $75 million machine. Education, equity rules, talent acquisition, talent retention, human resources, benefits, healthcare benefits. Oh, I mean, this is desperately needed. I think also it will provide a level of accountability that our town is looking for in their government. So I'm fully supportive of it. I also have the question of why the choice of assistant town manager. Some have said, you know, why have it if it's going to, if this person is going to report directly to the town administrator? At this point, I don't think that's germane to the conversation. I think in my travels, I found that that's how the charter essentially stipulates we have to do it. So I'm not so hung up on who this person will report to. I just think I would like to move forward, see maybe a little cleaner and more well thought out, job description. But I'm in full support of this.
Thank you, Jeff. Michael?
Just to follow up, and Jeff mentioned level of accountability. You know, when this first came before us, the idea was that it was going to, and it was related to revolving door conversations that were in the public. It was initially presented for the Board of Selectmen to be who they reported to. And I have interviewed other towns' HR directors and spoken to select board members as well as members of their staff. And one of the biggest questions that always comes back is nobody's going to feel comfortable going to a human resource director to complain about administration if they work for administration. They're not going to complain about their boss, and it's highly ineffective, is what most people said, to have an HR director report to a TA or even an ATA that employs the TA. So I'm a little confused about that, on what the actual goal is. 90% of this job description makes a ton of sense. Just the intake. I would add that the assistant town administrator now, as her job description reads, is the HR director.
Right.
So belt and suspenders, I think this board needs to look at the assistant town administrator's job description, change that job description to take away a lot of those things, and that falls back into finally creating the org chart that we've asked for, and who is employed, who does what, and who they report to. It would obviously take a charter change to make the Board of Selectmen part of the HR position. I know that I don't have any interest in reviewing or doing intake, but one thing that we really should consider is the board, as the executive body, looking at exit interviews, and that would be something that an HR director could have we could have a mechanism through a charter change where that information got relayed back to the executive body. But to think, and I don't want anyone's expectations to be that this is going to create any problem that may or may not exist, but I've spoken to a fair amount of HR directors, town administrators, and employees of other towns that have them, and highly ineffective is the consensus.
So just to follow up on that, if you recall, Mary Anderson and I were looking for a different structure last year. And the feedback was that that structure couldn't exist under the current situation. And basically, understanding that and coming forward with some type of article to move the conversation forward would also, of course, then entail revising the ATA's job description, because obviously we would need to do that as part of adding a new position. So I agree with everything you said in the sense of trying to set this person up to be, or a charter change or whatever else. I still think it's important enough to move forward. It doesn't mean that it can't revise at a later date to become a stronger position, but at least to get something moving forward, that employees have somewhere to go. Now, understanding that, there's always going to be that issue of whether or not somebody decides to even reach out to somebody and take it, and have that conversation. But the idea that you're at least willing to create that position and have somebody streamline benefits and streamline conversations and different parts of everybody's daily life is really an important role for any employee to have, and even for the ATA, for her to be able to better, to do her job. She has so much, as the town administrator does, and this kind of lessens that load, allows more time to be devoted to other parts of the job. And again, I could see this position metamorphosize into something different over time, but I think we need to start someplace. Don, did you have any feedback?
Just minimal. I mean, I agree with everything everybody's saying, and I'd love to see it just become a more mature discussion with the job description and stuff. But going to take this in a slightly different direction, just so if Megan's listening. There's nothing in my mind that would diminish the rating and thereby the salary for the current assistant town administrator should this get created, because there's plenty of stuff that could be assigned if you shake this out. As a matter of fact, there's probably way too much stuff that's being done by everybody in that front office. So that being said, my concern isn't like, well, what if we pull the rug out from the ATA and then they'll lose some of their authority, so they'll lose some of their pay. That is not the discussion.
No.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a good point.
And that is why I was saying for the starting conversation that it would be under, so it's clear that it's not to diminish. Michael?
Just so I'm clear, you're saying under, because I hope nobody thinks that I was saying we're going to pull the rug out from Megan, because the amount of work she does is absolutely amazing.
Just want to make it clear.
Take what she's doing here and take it away, it would give her a fair shot at getting everything else done without working more than she should be. And I would argue that it's time to do a compensation study and look at what Megan actually does and elevate her, because I think she's due. When you say under the ATA, are you talking about the position structure and the org chart that I'm talking about? Or do you mean that she reports to Megan? Is she under the daily supervision of Megan?
So this is why I want to have the conversation, because I'm starting somewhere to exactly show that not to diminish the ATA's position. So to start the conversation, what do we see it as? It's not somebody who's over the ATA. And obviously, both report to the TA. So I think that we need to figure out how that position gets structured. And to your point on looking at Megan and her position and pay and all that, totally needs to be done. And how does this position fit in, and how much can we put to this position? Which is why, for now, I'm starting with under, depending on. Jeff?
Yeah, for me, as the new person here, I'd love to see an org chart. So what would it take to get that in our hands?
Joe?
For the organization?
Yeah.
Including this position. Where does it show up on a flow chart?
Sort of think this position falls, would it be equal to the ATA? Would it be under the, you don't have to answer all this tonight. This is what we're trying to say is.
Sure, I stand by the memo that I put in the packet.
Right, but again, I guess, in terms of developing that discussion, I think it's also for the board to talk about as we're looking at the ATA position as well.
The big picture.
Right.
So if I'm clear on your memo, Joe, it's a direct report to the ATA.
Correct.
Thank you.
However, that was not the impetus for this discussion tonight.
Right.
Understood.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to make
No,
that clear.
I just wanted to put this back on the agenda to have the conversation, because we've talked about this position over the course of the, not even the whole year, because we talked about this last winter, I guess it was, where, like I said, Mary and I were talking about in one direction, understanding the feedback that didn't work and that type of position, and then we just ran out of time. We didn't have enough time to go forward, so.
Well, it didn't work because of the charter.
Right.
So, I think this is a deeper conversation than the one position, and I would hate to lose another year, but there's no reason we can't vote the position with the understanding. And I think I would at least like to have a more robust conversation about autonomy and about the human resource director being able to report to the Board of Selectmen or a subgroup of the Board of Selectmen, especially on exit interviews and any complaints related to administration. And I would like to do this as belt and suspenders. We certainly can't approve it because it's 2 years to make a change in
Right.
this. But I think the board, as the board votes this, contemplates this, especially as it was originally presented and why, about doing this with a charter change for this annual town meeting, understanding that it will take 2 years. So I would like to have a further conversation about that.
So, go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Michael, and that is kind of a sticking point with me, because ultimately, if you put this position under the ATA, what are you really saying about its importance and relevance to the overall situation? Because the department heads aren't under the ATA.
No.
I mean, so you'd essentially be creating a sub position that would be a portion of the position would be below a large swath of the government. I mean,
So just to clarify, you're preaching to the choir, because I wanted a totally different setup last year. And Mary and I made that clear. We wanted a different setup, exactly that, an autonomous position. The feedback on the timing and the position and the charter made us drop that conversation for other items that we were trying to get to town meeting. So I'm starting this conversation again to say, I still believe that position is important. I see the long term, the 2 year, as I think vital, but I don't want to not do something to get us something for employees, and let's move it forward. We can continue to have that conversation to structure the position as such to get there in 2 years with the charter change for all the reasons we just discussed. But I don't want us to table it and not do it for, while we just try to deliver the finished product. I think it's important for employees to have somebody. Michael?
No, and I think what Don was going the same place I was going based on how it read. The under the assistant TA doesn't mean that they report to the assistant TA. They report to the town administrator. The position in grading would be under the assistant TA, not reporting to.
Okay, I'd like to make sure that the public knows that. And by the way, Julie, I was with you last year.
No, I know, and I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out that everything you just said about describing why, I understand it. If you're saying it for the public, I understand that. But I'm saying that's where my conversation and Mary's conversation was going last year, exactly to that place. So in any case, I guess my question to this board is, as we try to move forward on this and refine the position and figure out how and where it fits in, specifically with an org chart, et cetera, and looking at, and I think part of the conversation comes out of tonight, is another agenda item, well, executive session, whatever way we need to do it, is to be also looking at the ATA position and her compensation and position. So out of every meeting, we seem to get more items. So I'll also take note of the ATA position evaluation. Anything else on this? Michael?
No,
Oh,
just for the public's purpose, that it sounds like the consensus of the board is to move forward with the human resource director at this annual town meeting. Am I correct?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
That was exactly what I was gonna ask.
Okay,
Make sure we're moving this forward,
right,
this coming town meeting.
okay. So I think we have that consensus.
We're gonna get an org chart eventually.
And we do, yeah, Joe, can we get an org chart that you could share so that we can just look at the overall organization?
So we struggle with the applications, but we're trying to marry it to the budget and department discussion as well, so
Thank
that it's readable.
Great, thanks. Okay, can I get a motion on C?
May, Madam Chair, I move that we approve a Class 2 used car dealer and Class 4 auto repair annual license renewal for Sam's Auto Repair and Sales, Inc., DBA Sam's Automotive Center, 413 Route 28. I move that we also approve the following 204 annual entertainment license renewals.
224?
Can we vote on?
2000, do you want to vote on Sam's first?
Yes.
Okay. so
Different
We'll
types.
stop it at Sam's.
Second.
We have a second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Well, Julie did the whole thing last week.
Color
Moved,
commentary.
seconded, Voted for the four of us last week. Approve the
Trying to
following.
move it.
Approve the following 2024 annual entertainment license renewals. Cape Roots Market and Cafe LLC, DBA Cape Roots Market and Cafe, 557 Route 28. Weekday 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. inside, live recorded music amplification, dancing by live performers. As well as Hot Stove Inc., DBA Hot Stove, 551 Route 28. Weekday 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. inside. Jukebox, radio, television, live recorded music amplification, and dancing by live performers.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I move that we approve the following 2024 annual common viculars license renewals. Cape Roots Market LLC, Market and Cafe LLC, DBA Cape Roots Market and Cafe, 557 Route 28. Hot Stove Incorporated, DBA Hot Stove Saloon, 554 Route 28. Subfleet Incorporated, DBA Subway, 1 Austin Road. And lastly, Morin Frotton Inc., DBA Lighthouse Cafe, 216 Route 28.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
To old business, discussion and possible vote to call the special town election to fill the current select board vacancy, term to expire May 21st, 2024. Emily, again, thank you for the recent information today that we'll assess, but if you want to just give us an overview again.
Good evening again. If you don't mind, I'll just do a kind of brief summary of how we've gotten here. I think things have evolved quickly, so just to keep us and the public on the same page. So obviously we have the select board vacancy created by the resignation of Mary Anderson. The board originally considered under your independent authority whether to call a special election and opted not to. A petition was brought by registered voters of the town of Harwich to compel the board to call a special election. That was properly filed, and our office did complete the certification of signatures. At your meeting last week on December 4th, I was prepared to make a recommendation to you to call that special election on April 9th of 2024, and my recommendation was rooted in the conflicts posed by the presidential primary election on March 5th, and then just the time needed between any two elections for logistical purposes. At your meeting last week, the lead petitioner spoke and made a statement that, I hope you'll forgive me if I misquote you, Patrick, but generally the gist was that in light of the recommended timing, that he wished to withdraw the petition that he had filed under that statute. The board then had a conversation about whether to proceed with the April 9th date that I had recommended, and then also considering, in light of the statement by the lead petitioner, other options for potentially reducing the impact and cost associated with a special election if it was no longer the desire of the registered voters in town who sought it in the first place. So after the meeting last week, I did do some additional research. I spoke again with town council, I spoke with the lead petitioner, and I spoke with the vendor who services our voting equipment. So I do have some updates for you this evening. I'll keep them brief. I know the intention is to bring this back for more in-depth discussion at a future meeting. I shared some information with you this afternoon because I received the opinion from town council only today. It didn't make it into your publicly available materials, but I did share that with the board late afternoon, along with an updated, what I would call summary of scheduling options available to the board right now. Again, assuming that you're looking at potentially scheduling no earlier than April 9th. So the options I laid out for you were, again, to proceed with April 9th. I would say that would be the best option if the board is still hoping to hold a full-scale special election. That's the earliest date that does not conflict with any of the logistics associated with the presidential primary election. And we could have a full-scale, ordinary 13-hour election, which is what a normal election day is for us. The board would have options, even on that April date, to shorten hours, if that was the pleasure of the board, as well as to do things like opting out of vote by mail would also reduce staff time and cost. Last week, the board discussed the May 20th election date. That is the day prior to the annual town election. I think I hope I'm characterizing that conversation correctly, that if the board proceeded with that date, it was in light of comments by the petitioner seeking to withdraw the petition and to minimize the impact. One of the benefits of that date is that it would leave only one time of setting up our polling location, the community center gymnasium. It would be set up by our Department of Public Works one time and be left set up for several days. I would, if the board proceeded with that date, request that you minimize hours to the full extent possible. The minimum number of hours a polling place can be open on election day is 4 hours under state law, so that's what I would recommend to you. Similarly, opting out of vote by mail. The logistical question I had to research was whether or not our vote tabulator vendor would have additional memory cards available to rent, so that we could have one set of memory cards programmed for the special election ballot and then our regular memory cards programmed for the annual town election ballot. I was able to speak with the vendor, and they confirmed that they would be able to make memory cards available to us for that election scenario. It does come at a cost, but given that other costs would be offset by the reductions, it would still be a net cost reduction for the election as a whole. And then the other primary consideration for you is based on what town council provided today. I don't want to go into great depth on what that document said. I know I only sent it to you late this afternoon, so not much time to read and digest. But it did include advice that there are relevant legal factors where the board might consider not calling an election, a special election, despite the fact that the petition was properly filed and certified. So I think that'll be worth getting into at your next meeting, perhaps. But it's something for the board to consider. After I had talked with council, I talked with the lead petitioner, Patrick Otten. He confirmed that he was interested still in pursuing the withdrawal of the petition he had initiated, and he was going to be spearheading an effort to contact other folks who signed the original petition to see if they shared his opinion that it should be withdrawn. And that was an important factor that town council recommended that the board consider, was not just what the lead petitioner felt, but what other folks who signed the original petition felt as well. So I think it will be valuable if the board is considering that as an option to make space to hear feedback from those other folks who signed. There were 242 in total. 2 have already moved out of Harwich, so we're looking at 240 remaining Harwich residents who signed that original petition. I know Patrick's efforts are underway. So I would say those are kind of your 3 primary options, again, assuming that the board is looking to narrow the scope of your deliberations moving forward to April 9th or later.
One question that just, when you say reduced hours, which I understand and certainly would support, but what would those hours be? What would you see them as? Morning, afternoon? I mean.
So I would say I would only recommend reduced hours if you were going with, I would say, either the May 20th election date or if you were proceeding with an April 9th election date and had either no candidates or one candidate only. If you were having a full election that was a contested race, I would never recommend to you to reduce hours where folks would have a full chance to participate in that process. But if it's an uncontested race, then I would recommend narrowing to the full extent possible and times that wouldn't involve staff overtime. So during our business hours,
Yeah.
probably somewhere either 10 to 2, 11 to 3, or 12 to 4.
Okay.
Is likely what I would recommend
Just
to you.
I was just curious, so thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments on this item from board members?
No, you've already mentioned it. I just want to be clear about that. We're not considering it anytime before April 9th.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
The board,
We would not be
Is that the
considering it
consensus of the
anytime
board?
sooner, right?
Yes, mine.
You know how I felt about it originally, so I have no opinion at all.
so
Well,
3 of
based
us,
on the-
that's the consensus.
Based on the presidential primary, that's in fact accurate, because the problems it would present for staff and just logistical.
That's why I mentioned it, because I want to make sure that you can assure the clerk that we're not thinking about that.
Right.
That as well as staff, so thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Emily, appreciate that. And we'll obviously talk more at length after we read that recent information.
Okay. And if you folks have questions as you're reading through or things that you would like me to prepare in advance of your next meeting, please let me know anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I bring Patrick to the?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Patrick, can I ask you a quick question, if you don't mind?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you for coming up. I'm assuming that if you got all of those signatures, you would then turn that over to the clerk. Is that the process?
Clerk, as well as I have asked people to email Julie that they are withdrawing, that they're
Okay.
signing the second, that they're not supporting having a second election.
Okay.
I mean, how can I reach 240 people?
The same way you did the first time, I guess.
Yeah, true. But also, I have the voter list of who signed,
Sure.
okay? So, in fact, I've asked the Chronicle to publish a letter stating that the idea is to withdraw the request for a second election. People reading that can email Julie saying
Sure.
they don't want it, because we
Okay.
need those opinions, okay?
And then I do have a question for Emily. I'm sorry if you don't mind coming back. Sorry about this. Does it matter to the board for next Monday night if he only gets 100? Should that weigh in on our decision?
I can't think of a particular cutoff number that would be decisive for you. You may choose that there is one amongst yourselves. I imagine the more signatures there are, the more, folks who reach out to the chair or otherwise make known their opinion. It's valuable to have that additional feedback, but I don't think there's a cutoff number where you act one way or the other.
Understood.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it'd be fair to say, if you got everybody, it still wouldn't compel us to ignore it. But secondly, if you can get 42 people, it wouldn't have been a valid petition submission to you, because it wouldn't have passed the threshold to do anything.
That is correct.
So we may want to consider, if you can get down below 200, whether that shows that it wouldn't have actually been a real petition at that point.
Yeah, and I think that we'll see when we read through the information that once it's been filed, it is what it is. So back to Emily's original point, is that what Patrick's working on would be used as evidence,
Right.
right?
And that would potentially be in our packet for following Monday.
Certainly, we could
Great.
provide that.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you both.
Maybe a follow-up question, as well as a letter in the Chronicle suggesting that people, email you, Julie. Can I also do that on social media? Because that reaches a lot of people as well.
We don't control that.
But yeah, publicly putting I'm not putting your email publicly, but can I use your name as a contact
Yeah,
publicly?
that's fine.
And I do have the list. You could forward it to me, because I do have the list of all the signers, so we could check them off,
Yeah.
if that helps.
Patrick, and just in full disclosure, Julie's email is a public record.
Yeah, I
So you
mean-
can use it any way you want.
Thank you,
right,
Michael.
all right.
Thanks for
Good.
that added
Good for that.
clarification. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
I think I'll do out-of-office reply and send it to you.
I'll be back next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Trust me, there'll be payback.
Oh, I know.
So then, the last item was our discussion on the potential municipal tax bill inserts that we talked about last week. Joe, do you have anything further on that? Because,
Just that the statute that was included says that the conditions under which inserts would go into bills, if I could read for a moment from that. So this would be Chapter 60, Section 3A, and within that it's Clause D as in David. And that reads in its entirety that the collector may, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, as the case may be, include in the envelope in which a property tax bill is sent, non-political municipal informational material, provided, however, that if such non-political municipal informational material is mailed, it shall not be included if the material causes an increase in the postage required to mail the tax bill. So it has to be by vote of the board, it has to be property tax bill, and the flyer in question cannot cause the weight to change. And it's our understanding that this is the actual flyer.
Yes.
So we have that, we probably have our vendor duplicated to their, make sure it doesn't, but that's the question before you is, do you wish to do that? And if so, you should invoke Chapter 60, Section 3A, Clause D.
thank you. I'm sorry.
Paul
Hi,
Gazai,
Paul.
23 Derby Lane, also part of the Bikeways Committee. We brought this to you primarily just another way to get the word out to people. We feel, the more we can tell people, and it's not a whole lot of, it's a small sheet of paper, and even if 50% of the people might read it when they open up the tax bill, it might save a life. Don't know.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
So, does anyone want to make a motion? If not, I can, hey Kathleen.
Madam Chair, Kathleen Barrett, Finance Director. I just wanted to advise that it cannot be included in this actual tax bill, as everything has been sent to the printer, and due to very tight deadlines, it would not be feasible.
No, that's okay.
And there would also be costs involved, of which we're still researching. The other recommendation was possibly, kind of in lieu of why it would go out, is because it's more for drivers, but to possibly include it in the motor vehicle excise tax bills in February.
Yeah.
But I'm looking, there's 2 printing options, and we're going to try to see what the costs and the extra postage would be.
Okay. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
I think as long as it gets out there, that's the main goal. So if it has to be in an excise tax, yeah?
We have quarterly mailings, right?
No, it goes, it's one mailing with 2 attachments.
I mean, tax bills?
I'm sorry?
Tax bills when you send them out?
Yeah, we're mailing the tax bills before December 31st, of which there are...
Entire year?
It's for the whole second half of the year. There are 2 remittances with the tax bill.
Okay, that's my point. It's not the only thing that's going to be mailed out by the time.
It's the only property tax bill that it's going between now and June 30th. There'll be motor vehicle excise tax bills that will go out.
Follow me here. Most people are going to be affected by this in the warmer weather. That's the point I was trying to make, is that there's a subsequent mailing beyond the one that you're talking about that would get us into the late spring and summer, because you're making a second tax mailing.
No, we only mail one.
Well, then you got to take me off your mailing list, because I know I get the second half tax bill at a different point in the year.
Second half, yes. The first one goes out, though, would put us beyond summer.
Yeah.
Right? The one
Yeah, we
where-
just have the 2 tax bills that go out. The preliminary, which goes out in July, and the actual that needs to be mailed statutorily before December 31st.
So what Dawn is saying is that we could wait till the July, which to Michael's point, by the time that gets out, some's already here. So I personally like the idea of the excise tax bill in February.
Since it's drivers who are
Right.
who this is
And
being
it's
focused on,
geared.
a lot of the mailings goes to mortgage companies, and they're just gonna throw it away.
That's true, too, right?
I think that was a great recommendation. I struggle with this law because I don't see what law you're gonna, which one you're gonna break. And I appreciate the gentleman that said it might save a life. But again, when I'm crossing the double lane in the summertime, or when there's a mile and a half of traffic behind you because there's 12 bikes on 28, I'm not sure what thought actually went into this law. But
Agreed.
that's my own personal opinion because it is law.
Right. And that's the
Thank
point.
you for that
It is a new law.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
just
keep you
trying to.
apprised of the cost and the involvement, but as we have a new printer for the real estate tax bill, we're already working on the process, want to make sure we have enough time. We didn't want to delay the process with an insert and then not have a funding source for it as well.
Thank you, and thank
Thank
you
you,
for staying
Kathleen.
tonight to tell us.
Oh, my
So
pleasure.
real quick, if you don't mind,
Of
if
course.
if we
Oh,
were
of
to
course,
do
John.
the excise tax route, what's the deadline for us?
They go out in February.
So you would need,
So we would have to have everything ready in January. I'm not sure the exact turnaround, how long it
Okay.
would take.
Great.
I think it would be fairly reasonable. It won't reach, every single property on here, but it'll be everyone who has their car, their primary garage is in Harwich. It's actually, you'll probably get more people.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense, because to your point, a lot of the taxes go to mortgage companies.
Yeah,
so-
and there's a lot of out-of-state property owners for second homes where people in New Jersey and Switzerland really aren't going to be too worried about this.
Okay, so you'll have adequate time to get that information?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've already reached out to the printer, but because they're so focused on tax bills, they
Sure.
would rather deal with this in January.
Okay, that's great. So you'll bring it back to us and let
Yes,
us know?
as soon as I
Thank
hear
you.
back.
thank you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Paul. And that's it, Town Administrator's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 grants to announce and 1 hiring. First, the grants are, there's a $5,910 grant that was received for the benefit of the Council on Aging Department from the Mass Council on Aging Executive Directors Council. And the use for these will be for more tablets, a better projector, and being able to brand items that are Council on Aging for the benefit of our seniors using those services. So we thank Julie Wittes for that work. And any of us that were tramping in the mud the other day, I mentioned that the town has received a Clean Water Trust grant in the amount of $75,000. As you recall, I do not know the contents of it. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know where that came from.
I would say now that it's been introduced, that's public record.
We should put it in the pocket next week.
Oh, it's terrible. In any event, we have a contract with Ty and Bond to do stormwater asset management, and this grant will go towards mapping all of our culverts. We were talking about the Hoyt Road one the other day, so this will go a long way towards us pursuing other grants for that culvert work, as we saw with Cold Work and others.
Great, thank you.
And then the hiring, you may recall that Madison LeBlanc in the assessing office was recently promoted to assistant assessor. I'm pleased to announce that Heather Cavatorta has been hired to replace Madison, so she'll be coming in as an administrative assistant, and she'll be starting the first business day of the new year.
Great,
And that completes my report.
thank you. Don?
Selectmen's report.
Yeah,
Okay.
Selectman,
She's taking the express route here. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, on behalf of the whole board, a profound thanks for all of those men and women from our police and fire departments who stood out in some really crummy weather at some points, as they have in the past years, too, to collect toys for tots, coats. They're just a remarkable bunch of folks. I sincerely appreciate, I'm sure we all do, what they've done this year, and hope they continue to do it.
Thank you, Don. Jeff?
I have nothing, Madam Chair.
Michael?
Just echo Don's comments, as well as all the members of the public that showed up with stuff. Very generous community. Julie, just one ask, and I would ask that we agenda sooner rather than later, the replacement to the Housing Trust. With the unfortunate departure of Mary Anderson, we don't have a selectman's representative on there to report back to the board. And then I also think we should address the committees that are missing a liaison and dole out some assignments so that a select board member can reach out to those committees to let them know they have support.
I'll add both of those. Try to get them on for next week if we can. Yeah, and I would just reiterate that the Cold Brook site visit was excellent, and I stayed upright, and that's really all that matters.
Despite your shoe attire.
Despite my patent leather shoes.
Miracle.
It's the other Muddy Creek.
That's right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Want to burn the evidence?